Okay, well.
As long as we all feel safe here.
He seems very comfortable. Okay, welcome to the Nothing to Prove, Only to Share podcast. This is episode 2, season 3. Yeah. Our guest today is Nick Salisbury. Hey.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing great.
Just having a little snug with Max.
With Max, yeah. My new friend.
New friend?
Yeah.
Wait.
You haven't met Max?
No.
Oh my gosh,
No.
the way
Why?
that he ran up to you when you walked in, I just figured he knew you well. And like the way he's...
Just chilling, yeah.
What?
Nick is
No.
a Max whisperer.
We're new
Wow.
buddies.
Oh my gosh. That's
We're
awesome.
new buddies.
Bring him to all the gigs.
Yeah.
I know, jeez.
Be a busy dog.
Okay, well, do you want to just give us a little bit of an intro? Tell us a little bit about you, what you're doing.
Well, I'm Nick Salisbury, and I play the bass in Minneapolis, and this is all I've done for 20 years now. And just once I graduated college, I grew up here, came back to town and started going out and hearing bands, hearing musicians, trying to figure out, well, where might I fit in? Mm-hmm. And then just kind of started knocking on doors and seeing if I could sit in and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
All that sort of breaking into a scene when people don't really know you.
Yeah, for sure. Did you start playing bass as a kid or like?
I got my first bass at 13, and it was a few years before it dawned on me that maybe this is what I actually want to do.
Cool.
It took a while, because the idea of playing an instrument initially, like, this is a fun and cool thing to do, and then trying to reimagine it as an occupation.
Totally.
It took a while to get right with that, and then figure out how do I go about doing this. You know?
Is that what did you study music in college?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Just like general music, or was it?
I actually I have a degree in electric bass performance, which is
Whoa.
silly.
I've never heard of that, honestly.
I know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Awesome. So when you went to school, were you already set on pursuing that as like a career? Or it was just like, this is what I'm interested in right now and this is what I'll study?
So I started at the University of Minnesota, so I could stay closer to my family and here. And I quickly realized I was not prepared at all for their music program.
Oh.
Which, like, the music theory courses I did very well in, but ear training courses I didn't, because I didn't have any background in how to study these things. So after one semester, I just dropped out of the music program and just did general education things, and thought, well, I probably shouldn't be a musician. Like, I must not be. And but then after a semester of not pursuing it, I thought, oh, this is wrong. I need to find a way to pursue this. I need to find the right way for me to do it. So that's when I started looking at school in Boston. And so what I ended up doing was I did a bunch of general eds at the University of Minnesota and then transferred them to Berkeley in Boston.
Oh, hell yeah, cool.
And then was able to get through that school in 3 years or something like that.
Cool.
And they were better equipped to help somebody that had the shortcomings that I did. You know, the things that there was the things I was good at and things I was not good at, and the teachers were, adept at recognizing those things.
Yeah, cool. Were you what was your music background as a kid? Like, were you involved in stuff in school, or you were just kind of playing by yourself?
There wasn't a lot in our house. Like, my family are not musicians.
Okay.
My folks had a couple of cool records, like Carpenter's Gold, things like that. But there wasn't a whole lot of guidance. But, around 12, 13, when I started getting interested in music, it just seemed like you kind of start to bond with people and find things to, get together on. So playing an instrument seemed like the thing to do. But the guitar, having 6 strings, just seeming to someone that knows nothing, it seemed awfully complicated. And I thought, well, the bass has got only 4 strings. So that must be easier. And that's honestly why I chose the bass. It wasn't like I was drawn to it or had some
You were like, this is the thing that I could probably figure
Yeah, I
out.
could probably manage this.
That's awesome.
Honestly, was the thought process. But, you know, you get a little bit further down the road and you realize like, oh, to do anything well, whatever it is, takes a lot of effort.
Totally.
And, you know, you need to listen carefully. So
Yeah. I want to hear more about, you were saying when you were in college, you had maybe thought that you weren't cut out to be a musician. Was there any outside factors that were encouraging you or discouraging you from pursuing that? Or was it just kind of an internal thing?
Well, I mean, the external factors were just getting bad grades in some of the music classes. And I thought, I'm not cut out for this at all. And I'd look around and see other people that seemed very good and comfortable at what we were doing. So I thought, where did I miss the boat here?
Yeah.
But it was also a music program it's a more classically oriented music program. And so there wasn't any focus on contemporary anything. So what that school offered and what I needed were different. But as a younger person going in there, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
I kind of had to find out the hard way.
Sure.
And so that's what kind of discouraged me for a while. But then just deciding like, well, I guess I'm not a musician. I should just not do this. And then the trying to not do that was difficult as well. So I kind of figured like, okay, there must be a path for me here. I just need to figure out what it is. Because I'm not happy walking away from it.
Totally. I really like that. I just read something on like Instagram or something. It's like a TikTok, who knows? But something about like, if it's your calling, it'll keep calling you. I like that we can't really escape that, like what we're meant to do.
Yeah, I think especially when people are diving into creative endeavors, because there's you have to give up a lot, you sacrifice a lot to do that. And you have to be willing and prepared. You know, if you could choose to do something more lucrative and secure, you should definitely do it. You know, like but I had there was nothing else that was really pulling me.
So by the time you made the decision to move to Boston, you were pretty confident about it?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that I wanted to go for it. Of course, you know, you don't really know what any of these things mean until you're
doing it.
Yeah, and even like the last semester when I was about to graduate, I still was like, what the hell have I done?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like I've learned all these things, but what does it even mean? You know, because how do you apply it? How do you work? How do you go get gigs?
Right.
How do you handle your money? How do you file taxes? Like
so many things to know. Yeah.
All those things.
Did you feel like Berkeley prepared you for any of that part of the
life
world?
Yeah, life. Just like the adult shit.
Like, did they give you any help with like music law maybe, or like?
There was probably more resources that I could have tapped and didn't really, because these things didn't occur to me until
it was time to
pretty
do
much.
It.
Yeah,
Totally.
I mean, my last bass lesson with Danny Morris, who was one of my bass instructors, we just went out for coffee and muffins, and he was just telling me like, here's how I handle things. You know, you want to keep good records and be above board, because musicians are easy targets for being audited and things like that. So I mean, that was my last bass lesson with him, was
cool.
where I was like, Danny, what do I do?
Yeah.
Like, how do you do this? You know, so that part was pretty scary. And numerous times over the years, I thought, well, maybe I should have just stayed here and found the busy older players and just followed them around and just, you know, I'll buy you a beer in exchange for some advice or something, you know, like.
Totally.
Because that would have been beneficial as well. But, you know, you can't rewrite your own history.
Totally.
So, but
and there's still room for that, to get advice and to get perspective from others.
Yeah, well, completely. And I soon fell into gigs where I was playing with people that were generally older than me. So I was very much the pup.
Yes, learning.
And learning, yeah.
Very cool. So you moved back here after you finished college. Where did you start? Like, what was first? Like, did you have people that you knew that you wanted to play with, or?
Well, the first thing I did was I got a job at Guitar Center in the inventory department.
Obviously.
So I didn't have to sell anything.
Dream job.
It was interesting, but also, I was happy when I was done with it.
Sorry.
There's something majestic going on.
It's pretty.
Is that Richard? Is that you? Is there something majestic that you're playing?
Oh, yes.
Ooh.
I thought I had it all muted.
No, that's okay. I thought it was like a tornado. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
In the headphones.
I thought it was like a truck laying on the horn or something.
It's pretty haunting, honestly. Like,
It's very beautiful, Richard.
Sorry about that. We've had some technical difficulties.
Spooky.
Okay.
Gravitas.
Okay, so you worked at Guitar Center.
Yeah. Which was okay. I did that for a couple of years. And then I would just go out and see, well, who's doing what, where are they playing? I found that Bunkers was a hub for musicians. And Mick Sterling had a very large horn band that played there every Sunday. And that's, I'd grown more interested in that kind of music. And like when I did a senior recital at Berkeley, there was no bass solos. I put together a horn band. So, okay, this is kind of up my alley. And so I went and checked them out. I brought a little mini disc recorder, which is very antiquated technology now, and recorded them a few times and just learned the show.
Cool.
And then when there was an opportunity down the line where I knew that they needed a bass player, I just called him. Hi, could I,
I know all your stuff. Yeah.
Basically, yeah. And they were at a period where Billy Franzi was in and out of the band because he was playing with Johnny Lang. So he was in town, then out of town. And so they needed subs frequently. And I would just drop by over the course of like 6 months and every few weeks, like, oh, can I sit in? It was always no, because they don't know me. It's just some rando. But then late summer, he's fine. Just email me some of the tunes that you know and come back next week. And so I sent him a list of like 40 tunes. I said, these are, call any of these. I don't need a chart. I know what you guys do. And he got my email about the same day that his upcoming sub for the next weekend bailed. And so it's late summer, so everyone's booked.
Yeah.
So he called me and said, do you actually know this stuff? And yeah. Like, okay, well, we need somebody next weekend. So he hired me, having never heard me. And I did the next weekend, like 3 nights in a row. And by the end of the third night, they had hired me. So I did that band for 3 years. Wow. Which was a great way to get into the scene because they're all, older players, very established, and it gave me a little bit of credibility in some circles.
Totally.
That this guy walked onto the stage. I showed up and the trumpet player thought I was there to set up the drums. Like they had no idea who. They're like, "Who are you?" I'm like, "I'm your bass player today." What? So at that was it took about 1.5 years of after college to make those kind of connections and then get busy enough.
Cool. That's awesome. I love that just that you kind of like figured it out, like learned their stuff, and then I think that might be the way for a lot of us is to just like be available, be around, keep showing up to the gigs, showing
up's a big deal, and doing work without the promise of a reward. And it wasn't the first time I'd done that. There was other people in town too where like, oh, I like what they do, or I like the bass player that they have. I can probably learn some things by emulating what they're doing. And maybe they'll need. If their bass player is a good player, they're going to get other gigs, and so that band's going to need a sub sometimes. So why don't I just learn their stuff?
Yeah.
And so there's a few times I did that where I was like, hey, I really dig what you're doing, and I'm enjoying the band. And by the way, if you ever need a sub, I know you're a book.
Yeah.
And they'd look at you like, what? Like, where are you come? This is crazy.
Why do you know my stuff?
Why do you know all
You
this?
weirdo.
Yeah. But it was a
But
good.
then it works out.
It was a good way, yeah. And then you get your foot in the door,
Yeah.
and you just it's like you just make sure it's a big foot when it comes to when you get in the door.
Yeah.
Like they know, like, oh, this person really actually spent the time. So I think it's one way to sort of separate yourself from other people.
Totally. I think too, like, as far as like my experience in this community, I feel like a lot of people are willing to, like, I was just thinking about you jumping in with Alex Rossi.
Oh,
Like,
that was super random.
Pretty randomly. Like, that's so cool. And I think that people are more willing to invite people in than maybe most think. Like, I think sometimes it is, you just gotta ask.
I mean, it's so contextual though. Like the Alex Rossi thing was like a solo thing, and I was just like, dude, this is super dope. And he was like, yeah, he was literally telling me like, man, I'm like bored of like doing solo sets where I'm just looping myself. I'm like, well, I've got to, like, I could bring drums and like,
Yeah, I know a guy. Me.
yeah, me.
It's me, I'm the guy.
You know, and like, you know, when a bass player bails and you know the stuff and you're a bass player, like contextually, it just sort of made sense in the moment. I think a lot of that happens. I think that's...
And it's not a guarantee that people will be friendly about it either. It's, because there was plenty of times the Mick Sterling experience, that was drawn out over the course of 6 or 7 months, and I was politely persistent, and I was, politely declined numerous times, you know. And other people would just say, "Oh, no, it's not it's not cool. It's not tonight. Go away."
Yeah.
But, which is fine, because I always looked at it like, well, why would they trust I know anything? I'm just somebody that walked up to them and asked, like, "Hey, can I be in your band for a couple of songs?" So,
Get out of here.
Exactly. So I think that being persistent and polite about it, I didn't walk away feeling like, oh, a bunch of jerks, I don't want to hang out with you anyway,
Yeah.
It was never like that.
Yeah. When they did tell you no, were you discouraged, or were you like, nah, they'll come around?
The only discouraging thing was when I'd go hear them with, or other bands for that matter, with subs that didn't know the material. I thought, well, wait, this is a bummer. Like, why can't I get a gig? Because I know the stuff, and they've hired someone that doesn't. But, people hire who they know and who they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
In music, there's a lot more than just who's the hot player. There's a lot of things involved. So, if they don't know you, they're not going to be comfortable with you.
I think something that Nate Gam told me and Sam Burgeon outside the 331 bar one night was like, yeah, I mean, you can be good, but people mostly just want to play with their friends. So, like, try and just be, like, friends with people.
Yeah.
Unless if you're, like, super hot. But
Well, and the very first gig I did with Nate, I think from the stage, I texted another person I play with and say, hey, you need a drummer. I just met a guy. I'm sitting right next to him. So so Nate and I got to do a bunch of gigs together, just by extension of meeting on one particular gig. Because immediately I thought, this guy's great.
Yeah, good hang.
He's a great hang, great player, cares about what he's doing, is prepared.
yeah.
All the things.
Yeah. The things you need to be.
Yeah, exactly. It's never a matter of like, oh, he's the hot player or whatever. He's wowing me with drum fills or what,
Oh, brother.
Oh, Richard Medic. What's Richard got to say?
Well, there's a great saying in Nashville. I used to live there, and there's a great saying in Nashville. It's like a 5-year town. And the reason why they say it's a 5-year town, and this was a long time ago, so maybe it's like a 15-year town now because there's so many people there.
Yeah.
But it's never because it takes you 5 years to prove that you're good. It's because it took people 5 years or so to meet a group of friends who trusted them enough to let them in. Because everyone in that town, or any music town, is like better than we are. Like everyone's amazing. The question of the professionalism or the talent is almost never the issue. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, is this guy cool? Like, do we want to be around him? Is he a good hang? Does he like the knowing it is so important. But
Totally.
being around is such an important part. Yeah. Anyway, Nick really nailed that.
Especially if you travel with a band, if you're like, you want to make sure you're not somebody that other people are going to want to murder after 2 weeks in a van, like learning how to travel with people and live in close quarters and all those kind of things are pretty huge too.
Totally. Have you ever have you gone away with playing with people that you enjoy being around, or have you ever had experiences where you don't?
Pretty much everyone that I've traveled and played with, I've really enjoyed. And people have different personalities, obviously, and different tendencies on the road. Some people want to separate. Some people want to be drawn together all the time. I think keeping your finger on the pulse of like what's going on with folks. If someone just got a bad phone call from home, like they're gonna be kind of crusty. So you gotta make some space for them.
Yeah.
And what I learned traveling was to make myself as small as possible. I wouldn't leave my shoes laying on the floor of the bus, or my open bags or my stuff strewn everywhere. I was always very compact. I learned that pretty quickly because I would find myself, I'd be annoyed if there's people's stuff is everywhere. Or the phenomena of when you get in a van and within 15 minutes there's 10 open bottles of water on the floor, and you're like, what? Whose
are these?
Whose bottle of water is like? Because people will just So I learned, okay, well, I need to manage my own space well, and also learned how to walk away from, if there's downtime between setting up and playing the gig or something, go find something to do. Find a coffee or go to a museum or things like that.
Yeah.
Those things help me a lot, when traveling.
Yeah, right on. We should talk about who you're playing with right now. Like, what are your current projects?
There's a lot happening every week. This week I'm playing with the Neighborhood Quartet, Mike Munson Trio, Sarah Morris, and Ray Bernard. That's all in the next 4 days.
Hell yeah.
And then there's probably about 10 bands that I'm a regular participant in.
Cool.
So, and for some people, they call me. I might be the first call that they have, but they're not possessive in terms of like, oh, you're in my band.
Yeah.
They know
that you're working.
Yeah. So they have people that they call to fill the positions on their gig, and I'm one of those people.
Cool.
So, but it's regular enough that's like it's very comfortable now, and I know the material.
Right on. How do you manage being in well, I guess now that you're comfortable, maybe there's less time that needs to be taken to practice, or
it varies.
Yeah.
Like every week it varies, and I have to think about, okay, what's my order of priority? What material am I the least familiar with? How much of it is there to learn? What's the nature of the gigs? Some gigs, everyone's just kind of sitting down and it's a really mellow vibe. Other times, this is this person's kind of showcase show. So it's a bad look if you got your nose buried in an iPad.
Yeah.
But some gigs, that's totally fine. So I'll try to look at the week and say, all right, what do I need to know? For example, I'm in a week and a half, I'm doing a gig with Scott Laurent. I have not met Scott yet, but he sent me material to learn, which is great. And I'm going to make sure that I learn it. Yeah. Because he doesn't play a lot of gigs in town now, and so I want to represent him well.
Yeah. Will you see him before the gig? Or
we're going to get together one night beforehand.
Cool.
Last week, me and Lars Erik Larson and Blair Krevnick backed up Jake Labatz for a set, and there was no rehearsal. He just here's a list of, I think, 13 tunes, and we learned them on our own, and then he joined us on stage and we played them. So there's no rehearsal for that. You just learn the material, the best that you can.
Did you guys rehearse anything for like Mike Munson Trio when he had his residency a couple months ago?
We did I think we did one day
Okay.
at Lars's place, just a couple hours to talk through some ideas. But Mike's stuff it's if you can kind of grasp the main parts of it, you can jump in pretty immediately, and it's also very flexible in that there's not a ton of chord changes, so you really have to sort of concentrate on finding a groove that feels good immediately, and then how do you build on that groove, or how do you take things away from it, like a reductionist kind of approach, so that the song has an ebb and flow to it. And he likes it that way.
Yeah.
He likes to keep things loose enough like that.
That was a real fun month for me, just watching that happen.
It was for us too, because we had the chance to develop some of these things and gain familiarity and continuity of thought. So it definitely allowed that trio to play all the subsequent gigs we've done. It really got things kind of locked in.
Yeah, you guys seem to be on the same page.
Yeah, I think so. And Mike is someone who I heard about him before I even heard him. He was somebody that Mikkel Beckman and Jeff Ray would tell me about, and then I heard him in lacrosse and thought, wow, this guy's really, he's got his sound so dialed in.
Yeah.
You can tell when a musician has really spent the time to figure out how they want to sound and then present that to people. And I thought Mike had just done that so beautifully.
Yeah.
And then it was a year or two after that we actually got to play together. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the groups where you only have a rehearsal or no rehearsal prior to a gig? Like, do you think that works for you, or
yeah,
and you're comfortable with that?
Totally. I mean, I look at the rehearsal very often as like what's required for the band leader to feel comfortable. I'm completely content if people tell me this is what we want you to learn, and to what degree it's important that you nail this part, or it's a little more open. Whatever the parameters are, I'm completely comfortable not rehearsing. And I've had a lot of gigs where like the first Ryan Bingham gig I did. That was another one being hired with. They didn't know me. They never heard me. I was recommended by the drummer, and so the first gig was in California, and I met him the night before, and we talked about music in the trailer behind the festival stage, but we're doing this while they're sound checking the drums. So the trailer's like it's like being in a giant bread box that's vibrating. So there was no rehearsal, which is fine, because if you know what you're supposed to know, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And then just don't be scared of the experience, and don't beat yourself up if you make a little mistake here and there. So it's somehow over the years it's gotten I'm pretty okay with it.
Cool.
Honestly. And sometimes it's really fun to just let things happen and see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. I could see that. That could be very fun.
And there've been gigs where if the band leader decides, I want to play this tune, but I didn't send it to you. Cool, let's play it.
Let's do it.
I've said that to several friends on stage. Like, let's just throw me under the bus right now in front of an audience. It's because that way I'm not trying to. My mind's not trying to recall things I learned. Now I'm very much in the moment, listening to what's happening and trying to predict where they're going to go.
You're reacting.
Yeah. So I feel like the mind's working a little bit differently.
Do you have any performance rituals? Like, how do you prepare for a show, like in your own, aside from just like learning your part?
Nothing in particular, really. Like, there's no.
Just do it.
Yeah, there's no warming up, or I think for some people and for some instruments, it's very valuable to limber up, and I mean, vocalists, I think it's really good to exercise the voice beforehand.
For sure.
But I think I learned to play the bass in a pretty efficient way, so I'm not really straining anything. So it's not a problem to play 3 or 4 gigs a day and wake up the next day and play a couple more. Yeah.
Damn, that's awesome.
So but that's because I was taught how to, the mechanics of what my hands should be doing. So I think that's helped protect me in terms of like the longevity, the physical longevity of playing it.
For sure. I just remembered, did you put out a record with a vocalist, just bass and vocals?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Dude, I listened to that, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I almost made a record with the bassist, with Bob.
Oh, yeah?
Shout out, Bob.
There it is.
Our buddy Bob. Bob
buddy-
Delas.
Yeah, you know.
I know Bob. Bob's awesome.
Oh, yeah, Bob Billy.
Yeah, dude. Love Bob.
Yeah.
Here we are. I was just talking to Bob last night.
Yeah.
Were you?
I was at Whitey's, yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we listened to that record and really liked it. And I had never heard anything like it before. Like, just bass and vocals. It's cool. Have you heard it, Aurelio?
No, I haven't.
It's good. Really enjoyed it.
Well, the inspiration for that came from, there was an album called Then There Were Two, which the bass player is Mike Visiglia, who spent decades, I guess, touring with Suzanne Vega. And I cannot recall the name of the woman that was singing. She has a band called Ola Bell, I think. But it was a beautiful album, and it was all covers. So they, did like Joni Mitchell songs and Beatles, and just electric bass and her voice. And I thought, this is incredible. How do you, how do you do this?
Yeah.
And then around that time, I'd met Ashleigh Still, and she would show up at the songwriter night that I play at every Sunday that I've done for 18 years now or something. And every week she would have a new heartbreaking song. And she'd come in and say, oh, I wrote this last night, and then just devastate everybody. And then she'd do it again the next week. And we're like, where are these? She was like this well of beautiful songs that were heartbreaking and sassy, and just, and her voice was incredible. So on one of these Sundays, she sat at the piano and said, I don't feel like playing. How about here's the riff. Why don't you just play it and I'll sing? And I'm like, okay. And the room was like quiet, like pin drop quiet. And so we thought, okay, this really works. And the tone of her voice is such a marvelous instrument, and it's so different than a Fender bass. So it was an interesting combination.
Yeah.
And whenever we would try out these arrangements at the songwriter night, I mean, there's people across the bar watching sports or whatever. The whole place can get quiet. So if you can shut up a bar.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, all right. So yeah, she had tunes, and she would, I'd get the chord chart, or she'd show me what the chords were, and then I had to arrange everything on a bass. And, how am I going to play the bass note, but also fill out some of the harmony? And if there's a solo section, or a melody section, how am I going to do that? So every tune had some sort of challenge that had to be figured out. So, I mean, there was a couple of tunes where I'd put a capo on the bass, which I'd never seen anyone do, but this works fine.
Breaking the rules.
That's right.
Yeah, I felt really good about it. And then, we only ended up doing the one record, but the big gift to myself in this whole deal was I never felt like I had to do anything like that again, and also didn't feel like, I don't need to impress anybody with, technical playing.
Yeah.
Because
it's not always about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I did this thing, and I know I'm capable of doing it, and I feel good about it. And now, what's next? So it was I feel like it made all of my other bass playing endeavors better.
That's awesome.
Because I learned more about not trying to be flashy by doing a record where it was kind of flashy.
That's awesome. I got to tell Aurelio. So we listened to that record, Bob and I, and then we were like, we should write some songs and like maybe record some stuff that's just bass and vocals. And then it was like, well, maybe Ben should play with us. And that is High Range, a band that we started that was like, that we played one gig, but Aurelio played the one gig with us.
Yeah, I hijacked it.
So that was like, so that came from that record.
No way. I thought that was you and Ben had just been like doing songs together for a long time, and then Bob was like around.
Well, it kind of turned, because Ben and I did do a lot of acoustic stuff together, but the initial start and idea was that Bob and I just make tunes together, and then I was like, Ben's here. And then it turned into us not writing songs and just doing songs that we already knew.
Yeah, doing fun songs.
And then, and then Aurelio just...
Well, I mean, but it's a spark that leads to something, you know?
Totally.
And I mean, that's why I always have to tell people about the record that made me think about it, because I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Like, this is incredible what these folks did.
So what was the record that inspired the two of you?
The one that inspired me, I don't even know if Ashleigh ever listened to it, but the one that blew my mind is called Then There Were Two.
Then There Were Two. And then what's the record that you made with Ashleigh? Because you haven't actually said the name of it.
Oh, it's called Firefly.
Firefly,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, well now I have to listen to it.
Yeah, sorry, I probably should have led with that. Huh?
You could have. I'm like,
That's
what
okay.
are they even talking about?
I'll put it in the episode notes.
Yeah. There you go.
But you know, as I pursued the idea more, I found, well, there's several jazz artists that have done this. There's a vocalist named Sheila Jordan who's done several albums with just a string bass player.
Cool.
And I know that Ron Carter and I think Helen Merrill, I might be getting her name wrong, but I know there's a duet album that's just, you know, string bass and vocals. So it's not entirely unheard of, but it's also really uncommon.
Yeah. It was the first time, like I said, the first time that I had heard something like it. And I was like, man, you can do that.
Yeah.
There are no rules, is the thing.
Yeah.
And that's,
Just got to put a capo on a bass. You're good to go.
Yeah, it worked.
Yeah. Well, I think you and Bob DeLay should return.
Yeah,
to
I'm
that
feeling
at some point.
I'm feeling re-inspired for sure. Yeah, we should. We should. That'd be awesome. And Bob and I, we went to high school together, and I've known him a
cool.
long time. We played in a band in high school together, and so yeah, we know each other well, and especially on that, you know, in a music way. You know,
Well,
that'd be cool.
and he's somebody that, you know, I've met because he's come out to gigs and he's hanging out. He's showing up.
Dude, everything that you were talking about, I was only thinking about Bob, like how just he's so driven, and he's the type to just learn somebody's tunes just to try to get the gig.
Yeah, it's a good exercise. It's time consuming, you know. But I mean, at that time in my life, I hardly had any gigs, so I had the time to devote to it.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, making shit happen. Okay, before I forget, you should define success. Did Aurelio give you this little...
No, I didn't. No,
Oh, okay.
I'm throwing you under the bus.
That's okay.
We're live on
Okay,
stage.
so this is maybe also the first time that... Or no, maybe not. I was going to say maybe this is the first time that I haven't, like, coordinated a guest, which was awesome. Thank you,
yeah,
Aurelio.
Yeah, you're
King.
welcome. Figured I could do my part once.
So in every episode, we define success, or we have the guest define success.
Well, so when I was leaving college, I thought to myself, well, if I can just survive playing the bass, that would be great. Like that was whatever that meant. If that meant playing in wedding bands every week, but you know, the more you do, the more your thoughts on things evolve, and you know that's not what I want now. I'm far more interested playing with people that are writing songs or have their own creative vision and direction. It's fine to play top 40 gigs and things like that. You know, I'd do that as well. But if that's all I did, I would feel like I was missing something. Or, you know, I'd be leaving things unexplored. So what I do and who I play with, that component has evolved for me. I loved the few years I had where I was touring a lot. I loved that. That to me felt like, oh, this is where I want to be. COVID, of course, messed all that up.
Yeah.
So I miss that. I hope at some point there's a return to that. But there's nothing on the horizon. But there never is until there is.
Right.
So, you know, you kind of don't know. so I think it kind of evolves. It becomes a moving target, and you accomplish one thing or feel like a successful conclusion of some endeavor, some project, record or something. Great, I feel successful about this. Now what? What, where else am I going to go here? So I don't know. I don't really ever expect to arrive at a place where I can just like plant my flag. I'm a success. I don't, because I think there's always other things to try and pursue. And I mean, I think a lot about. I mean, I mentioned that Ron Carter record earlier. He's been on my mind this week because he just turned 87. This is like one of the most legendary bass playing musicians in the world, and he's still busy as ever. And so that's one of the things I think about is how do you maintain your momentum throughout over the course of a lifetime and still enjoy what you do. Like that's like the pinnacle of success. And not necessarily measured monetarily or anything, but if you can keep doing the thing that you love and still love it, that's,
Yeah, how often is it that you're playing, like, I've been writing down hobby versus success in my notes. Like, how do you keep loving it, or like how do you deal with the times that you don't love it?
Well, I mean, there's when you play bass for a living, you're not really having many bad days, So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like,
dude, great words. That's right.
So even the gig that I'm like, well, I'm not really able to pour myself into this music or this event or this experience beyond just being professional, So if it's play weddings or corporate events every now and then, and they're good paying gigs, so that always is nice. And I like my colleagues, and I certainly want to play well because that's all I know to do. So even the gigs that I feel like I'm not really invested in emotionally, you still want to bring it, and then the drive home, I think, okay, well, maybe, what else could what am I doing next week that's going to make me feel more like I'm developing?
For sure.
So this year I've just thought, well, okay, I'm going to do fewer of those kind of gigs, or at least, instead of, driving halfway across Wisconsin to play a wedding and things like that, I'm trying to keep it a little closer to home and maybe hold out for some of the gigs that require more of me. Yeah. Instead of, just the person to show up and play the Whitney Houston bass line or whatever.
Totally. Yeah.
Which is still great, like I'm always cautious about how I talk about that because it's, there's not ungrateful for those experiences. But it's really fun. I feel like the takeaway for myself is greater when I'm in a situation with other musicians where we don't know what's going to happen, and it's a bit of an adventure together, and that that's not how corporate gigs are.
Right. For sure. You mentioned when you were defining success, there's always something else to pursue or to like move forward towards. Is there anything right now, like any specific goals right now that you're working towards?
With a few of the groups I'm playing with, trios or duo things like with Dan Schwartz, that I'm actually now in a position where I'm bringing compositions, which is new for me.
Awesome.
And I don't know where this where this has come from, other than maybe it's just the opportunity is there now, and I know, well, I can bring this to people that will help interpret it, and I don't need to micromanage things. I can say, here's the general idea. What do you think? So that's had me thinking more and more. And as I write one thing, then something else comes out of it. So that's been great. And I feel like I'm happier with the sound that I'm getting with my instrument, I feel like I understand that more than before, which is, it's that's hard for other people to understand. I think it's, but when you pick up a guitar or you play a drum and you like, oh yeah, the way I'm doing this is yielding the sound I want to hear. So I feel like my success ratio is greater now than it has been. So I'm happy about that.
Completed the quest for tone. That's how you can break it down.
Or moving closer to it,
Yeah.
And I think part of it too is listening to I listen to a lot of, there's a handful of upright bass players I listen to a lot. And I think the idea of getting closer to the sound of an acoustic instrument, which is, I play the electric bass. So, but I think I'm trying to figure out, how do I strip away all the other things? What works best for me usually is to, I might bring a tuner if I'm using any pedal. Otherwise, I like to combine an amplifier and a particular instrument. And I know, okay, these two items play well together. And I'm not using a lot of other external things.
Yeah.
And the instruments I like to use are very simple. And so I feel like it's just kind of getting me closer to, the sound that I want to have. But it's been very much inspired by listening to upright players, because that is, there's hands on wood and strings, so.
Yes.
Is there anything that still mystifies you about music?
Yeah,
Everything.
there's so much. And when I meet players that hear things differently, I know players that have the full range of perfect pitch. They can hear every single thing. That blows my mind, because I never felt like I was naturally a musician at all. I had to
work for it.
I had to really work for it. So, whereas I know other people that they can't help themselves. They've just been struck over the head with genius. So that always...
So annoying when you meet one.
I know, right?
Screw you, dude. Get out of here.
It always blows my mind that when those folks have that ability, and then how they approach music, the people that can more freely improvise. Being a bass player, I always hear things. In my case, I always hear things from the bottom up. So I have to try and identify what the root note is and the root note motion, and then discern, okay, is that a major chord? Is it a minor chord? What's trying to understand what's happening with the chord progression. So, and sometimes I hear things where I'm like, wait, what? Why can't I hear that? What is that? What does that move?
Yep.
And so I have to sit with it and try and figure it out. And some of the upper voices, I might not be able to discern what's going on. And when that happens, I try to go with whatever my impression is. Sounds major, sounds minor. I think that's what it is, and I'll play to that impression. And if I play something that sounds wrong, then I know I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And then I correct. Yeah.
Any words on making a mistake on stage? Like, I suppose you've been playing a long time.
Yeah, I make mistakes all the time. It takes...
Richard has words. He said,
Richard's got
Nick's
words.
always making mistakes.
This guy, Nick.
I had a gig last summer with Sarah Morris, and it was in St. Peter. And then my next gig that evening was in Wabasha. So on Sarah's gig, I played a bunch of little mistakes, I don't think she even heard them, but I knew I did them.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, where it's like this cascade. Oh, sorry, Max. Where you make one little error, and then you get hung up on it. Then you make another little error. So it's this cascade of boo-boos.
Yes.
And so then I had to drive. I had to hang on to that feeling. I didn't have to, but I did. From St. Peter to Wabasha, it was a 2-hour drive, and just doing the. Just felt like the dumbest guy ever. And it was like by the time I got home that night around 1 a.m. or something, I felt a little better, but I still remember it. And this was last September or something.
Yeah.
So usually I'm better than that. Like if I make a mistake, I don't beat myself up about it. But this was one instance
Sometimes,
where, there was like a little burst of small errors. But most of the time, if you make a mistake, well, okay. Don't try not to get hung up on it. Understand that that's part of the experience of live music. And
so true.
And the more you become, fearless about it, then the easier everything becomes.
Totally. I've been thinking a lot about performance and confidence in general, because last time we were here, I was talking about that like getting comfortable on the stage like made me comfortable in real life,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for me as a singer, like I had to make big mistakes to just be like,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever.
Well, and you're very, like, if you're singing the song, you're out front, you're the focal point. So
yeah, everybody does be known.
yeah.
They heard it.
They're aware.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to hide behind the bass.
Absolutely. Bob has said that to me before, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a cloaking
Less
device
attention,
or something,
Hiding in the low ends.
Yeah. Although when the low ends, I mean, like,
Yeah.
when you totally beef it and
it-
play the wrong chord, like everybody knows that too.
Same deal with the drums.
Yeah.
If you beef the drums, you feel it.
Yeah,
Totally.
But sometimes when you really beef it, sometimes that can make a little moment. Sometimes
sometimes it can be cool to like to really pick yourself up after a mistake can be a game changer for sure.
I think maybe 2 years ago, Room 95 opened for Eric Koskinen at the Ice House. It was like our first gig, like our first show, and one of the songs that we played all the time.
Your first show being at Ice House is hilarious. Too.
Yeah.
We just played our first
whatever,
gig at Ice House,
whatever. And one of the our staple song that we always play, that we always are super tight with in the rehearsal, I totally cut out a verse with a fill into a part, into the bridge. And it was this weird moment of the three of us were all oh shit. I dug us all into this hole and we had to dig ourselves out, and then we did. And it was clearly a mistake, but the way we pulled out of it was pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And it was almost cooler than if we had just done it normally.
And
Totally.
a lot of those things will happen when you're recording with people too, where you want to record all the passes you can, because a lot of times the first couple are the most interesting, because there's the least known, the least known elements are about to happen.
Yeah.
So I remember there's an album by a guy named Tim Easton that Jim Keltner is the drummer on it, and there's a weird fill somewhere in there, 2 minutes into the song. And I asked the bass player on the record about it. He's like, "Oh, Keltner he hated that," because he I think they were recording in a home studio with kind of dodgy monitoring or something. But I was told that he was not happy with this kind of missed drum fill. He didn't mark the section the way he wanted to, and they kept it. And I think it's the coolest moment in the song, because it lands in such an unusual way.
Yeah.
So, but this is, matters of perception and how we perceive ourselves and how others perceive it. And it's really, it's easy to fall into patterns of being cruel to oneself.
Totally. Richard. We were just talking about this before we started the episode. Aurelio had to record, or it was your set too, when we were at 331 that night, and you grabbed the
audio off the board, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're
and Richard's like, I don't want to hear it. And
Always sounds bad.
And
Yeah, the worst thing for music is the truth. We don't do that.
but yeah, I think that's so true. It is all about perception. And I think I've known people in town where I've been like, man, I love this specific song on your record, and they're like, that's my least favorite. I think that's I gotta remember that even if I don't love it, somebody else maybe could.
Exactly. When I go to the 331 and Nick Salisbury's playing bass, and I'm sitting there, and maybe he's up there wow, I'm making a mistake. I'll probably be sitting there dude, this guy's a fucking genius. Dude, this guy's crazy. Who knows? And neither one of us will know.
Yeah.
I'll let you keep believing that then.
Then that's the key. That's the key.
Yeah, I can't remember, Nick. When have we ever made a mistake on stage? I
Exactly.
don't think we ever have.
Literally never ever.
Yeah,
Those are flawless.
Okay, cool. I think it's probably about time to wrap up.
We got about 5 minutes left
Okay.
on these, yeah.
I usually let people plug at the end. Is there anything that you want to plug, like socials, records?
Well, my weeks change. I mean, they're so often. So no particular like this show is coming up.
Yeah.
But every week on Facebook, I'll post a page like
You're gigging. You're out there.
Yeah, an image of like, well, here's my calendar for the week.
Cool.
And it changes a lot, but I tend to play, 4 to 10 gigs a week. So it's if people want to look at that.
Yeah. So what's your like tag on social media for the people?
Well, he doesn't, now that you say that you do that on Facebook,
Yeah.
but you don't do it on Instagram.
I'm pretty lazy with the
You
Instagram.
better do it on
My goodness,
Instagram
dude,
too,
Nick, I'm realizing there's a whole world of Nick Salisbury. I'm missing out on.
Yeah.
I don't look at Facebook.
Oh, I know. A lot of people don't. But most of the people that
Sure.
are like kind of in
Right.
the network in town here. So that's kind of why I've been neglecting the Instagram. I'm not very good at the social thing. And it's been actually kind of nice to not care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
There's a lot of pressure, I think, on creatives of all
Totally.
kinds to like keep up there. Totally.
yeah, and if one's focus is music, I mean, I understand. If I were the band leader or the artist, it'd be a completely different story. But I haven't really felt strongly drawn to it. When I was touring a lot more, I posted all the time because I was going places, and it was, every now and then, like, here's a cool rock and roll thing. Look where we're playing. But it was mostly, hey, here's a cemetery I found in Louisville, or here is a museum in Germany or in Berlin or something, So I felt like kind of maintaining it as like a travelogue was nice.
Yeah.
It's way cooler.
But
Way cooler.
it worked better for how, what I feel comfortable with. So rather than here's this cool rock and roll thing I'm doing and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel sincere. So if I find a way for it to feel more sincere, then I'll probably pursue it more.
Yeah.
But I think I put one thing on Instagram since 2022. So
Yeah. I feel that. I've always had that struggle, especially with the podcast too. Like, I just hate the feeling that
So dumb.
that I have to promote on social media. Sometimes it can be really fun. But yeah, like I want it to feel sincere and authentic.
Yeah,
And not so like
and I know people that
Yeah, right.
that they're really good at it, they're really diligent about it, and seem to me very sincere about it. So I think it works for some people, and I feel like I struggle with that. But it hasn't. I mean, I played more gigs last year than I have in my life, so like it's not rendering me unemployed.
yeah.
So that part's
Yeah. got it.
good.
So do I have to be your friend on Facebook to see these things, or do you have like a musician page on Facebook?
Just me.
Okay.
Yeah, not like a musician or
Awesome.
band page or anything.
Okay. I'll send you a friend request later. Cool. I think we're ready to wrap up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Okay. The end.
Busy.
Richard.
Week. There it is. There it is.
Oh, you woke up next.
Sorry.
Oh, super fun.